Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
So this week, it was your topic idea. You wanted to talk about scouting? Is this something about merit badges?
Totally. This is all how Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts can take photos when they're off camping, and I can't even finish that sentence. No.
Do Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts get to go camping together? I was never a scout in my youth.
I don't think so. I think they're very – well, hang on. Let me profess the fact that I am now old, and back in my day, there were two very separate things. But I think at some point the organizations merged or they're under the same umbrella. I actually haven't followed it since I was a scout.
Yes, because you were a scout.
10 years ago when I was 18.
Exactly.
And
all right, so the scouting
15.
we're talking about here is a little bit different. It's scouting for locations. And, you know, I was just thinking back, I used to read a photography magazine here in the UK, and every issue had a location that you could go to take photos. And it would show how to get there, what you might want to take pictures of, what the difficulty level was, if it was like near a parking lot or if you had to hike 5 miles, things like that. And the one thing I always thought about that is you're going to go there and meet other people who read the magazine.
yeah, which can actually be a really good thing. What I found interesting in terms of like scouting and locations, just to kind of take a little brief aside, is it is actually cool when you do go to a location, particularly like landscape photography or whatever, and you run into other photographers. I've had great interactions with other people who are there because they're shooting this, epic sunrise or landscape or the petrified forest, like all of those kinds of things. You get a lot of people who share that same interest, and there's a camaraderie there. I mean, it's really one of the best things about landscape photography.
And we're not talking about the kind where 100 people line up to get a selfie on the edge of the cliff.
That is not what I was talking about either. No, the key is you get there at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, which is work. I am not an early morning type of person, but for this I will. The key is you get there early, and then you get some great pictures, and then you go to breakfast while everybody else starts to show up.
Yeah. Didn't you talk about that with your trip to Florence, with your trip to Italy, that there was a place in Florence where you got there really early and a lot of people were there already before sunrise?
Oh, yeah. So I think this was before sunset. I went to a park that just has this amazing overlook of Florence. And it was already really busy. It was a very hot day. And I basically kind of, made my way up to this little stone wall that overlooks this beautiful vista, and then spent, 2 or 3 hours basically holding my position, like defending my spot while lots of other people came up, and sometimes they would, stand next to me and have some wine or a little something to eat, or so many times somebody would take a phone, and because I was kind of in the way, they would just kind of like put their phone off to the side in front of me so they could take a picture. But it was absolutely worth it because I had a really good spot. I had a little mini tripod, like I was all set up, and I loved the photos that came out of it. But that was definitely a case of picking that location, figuring out when the sunset was going to happen, try to imagine, what that's going to be like, and then, just kind of hanging out and enjoying the time.
Enjoying the time of holding your position for 2 or 3 hours while people pushed you around. It sounds like a general admission concert where you run to get up to the rail in the front.
It kind of was, although there wasn't really that much pushing, but there was always 3 or 4 layers of people behind me.
Yeah.
But it was totally worth it. But the key to doing something like that is having some planning, because oftentimes, like you and I will go out and we'll go just in search of photos, right?
Of whatever comes up. Serendipity.
Of whatever comes up. There's that level of discovery, and I'm just going to take a camera and see what's going on. But sometimes you really need to plan. And in that case, it was, I'm in Florence. Where can I go that will have a nice view at this time so I can get a sunset or a sunrise when I was elsewhere? And it's that kind of planning that's needed. Before I jump into that, I just want to say one of the reasons why this topic came up is I'm going to do a portrait session with somebody this weekend. And we had met once before. She wants some pictures of her for her website. We wanted to find a really good location. So we had coffee. We talked about some possible places in Seattle that she really likes, and we found one and decided, okay, well, I will go check that out and see what that is in terms of where the sun's going to be, whether there's awful graffiti, like, swearing and things like that, if it's even safe, if there's room to shoot, like all those kind of things. And I think it was like a week later, I managed to actually go out to the location. It was a little tiny, tiny patch of park that's underneath one of the bridges here in Seattle. And the Lake Union stretches to the left and the right of this spot. And so you have, like on one side, you have the Space Needle in downtown Seattle. On the other side, you have this park called Gasworks Park that has these old rusted giant factory. Like, it's really kind of cool. Plus you have the industrial nature of the bridge itself. So lots and lots of different options. I was really looking forward to this, but I had to make sure that I went to check it out myself. And when I got there, for whatever reason, maybe because that's where lots of homeless people would accumulate or something, there was just a big fence around the whole thing. There was one guy who had gotten in the fence who was sitting inside eating a sandwich, or maybe he had, like, I don't know, kayaked up or something. So obviously this wasn't going to work. And it just proved to me that even if it's something that you are pretty sure you know what you're going to get, always, always, always go and scout the location first, because you never know. If we had gone to actually do the photo shoot that day and showed up there, we would be kind of screwed. Like, we'd have to find something quickly, because by that point, she's on the clock. Like, I have, a certain amount of time that I allocate for a portrait session. So the importance of scouting, and this also applies to landscape photography. If you have the ability to go and look at a place first, that's great. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's remote.
Well, sometimes you're traveling someplace and you make a list of things you want to see. So that's kind of pre-scouting, and you can use Google Maps, Google Earth, whatever, to find things like that. There are books or websites showing places that are nice for taking photos.
Yeah, basically you just outlined all the good things to do.
Well, it doesn't always work. You can use Google Street View for the place you wanted to go, but it doesn't tell you that day it's fenced off.
Right.
What you can find is what's around, what's there. You can get a view of an area, but you don't know how accessible it's going to be until you get there. Now, if you're on vacation, it doesn't matter, because let's say you're on a week's vacation, you're going to a whole bunch of places. If one of them is off limits, you'll go to another one. It's not a big deal. But if it is something you want for a portrait shoot or a fashion shoot or anything like that, then you've got to really make sure that it's available, especially what's the right word? You're a dilettante in this sort of thing. You're a professional, but you're not you don't have a whole team doing hair and makeup and lighting and photographer's assistants. But if you are in commercial photography, you have to have a scout who makes sure that you can get your team of 8 people to this place and that everything will go smoothly.
Yeah, exactly. And there are also going to be issues of, are you going to a place that's going to need a permit or something, more complicated than that? So there's that kind of research to do too. I would say, just to kind of step through the process of, in this case, trying to find the location for this photo shoot. While we were having coffee, one of the main things I did was I pulled out my phone and opened Google Maps. Because, actually Apple Maps, but either mapping, whatever.
Yeah.
And that way, when she was telling me about the locations that she'd like to go, and so this was like her little secret spot. So it took a few minutes to find that as she's talking about it. And then using the satellite view on the Apple Maps, that allowed me to kind of pinpoint where that was. It was a little odd because it's underneath a bridge, but you put it into 3D view, rotate it, you could actually see what that was. So the Maps app, I think, is super valuable as a starting point because you want to find things that are either a place that you know or someplace nearby so that when you're there, you're not just casting about. Like you have that overview. And also,
yeah, you know where you're going.
You know where you're going, but also you're not having to try to figure it out from there.
Right.
Which I think having at least a rough mental picture in my head helps a lot.
You also want to know where you can park.
You also want to know where you park. Yes, that is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because not only are you wanting to be close, but I'm going to have a lighting setup and I'm going to have gear. So
yeah, and you don't have an assistant to carry it.
And I don't have an assistant. No, maybe I should get an assistant.
An assistant.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, one of the most important apps you need is your weather app.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you know that, so we're recording this, it's a Tuesday, and if you know on the weekend you're going to be doing a photo shoot, you need to check what the weather's going to be that weekend, because if you're out and uncovered and it's going to be raining, well, that's a problem. You are bringing lighting, so you don't really care too much if it's sunny or cloudy. In fact, it's often better if it's a little bit cloudy because it diffuses the light. But you need to know if it's going to be windy, if there's going to be rain, if there's going to be tornadoes or anything like that.
Yeah. Several days before a photo shoot, I'll be checking the weather a lot. And in fact, there's like the weather app. I also use there's an app called Storm Radar, which is also really helpful, especially when I'm out doing maybe like a landscape shoot. That way you can see where a storm's going to come in, because typically if I'm doing more of maybe a photo weekend or something like that, it's going to be a whole bunch of different areas. So is it going to be worth driving 45 minutes to this location when it's pretty clear that it's going to be pouring down rain and nothing that you're going to want to actually shoot? There have definitely been days where it's like, I think this would be amazing, but it's going to be absolutely rainy and garbage. So I would much rather just sit here next to the fire and read a book. That is also legitimate.
This said, if you know that a storm's going by, a good time to take photos is just after the storm.
Yeah. So being able to see like where's there going to be a break in the storm? Maybe there's an eye in the middle of the storm, something like that.
You can get some great light, and you get the water dripping off trees and all of that, and it can be really interesting.
Oh, yeah. I say scouting and I think of location, but you're right. Scouting is also conditions, and that's also very, very important.
And so you're going to mention a couple of apps that you use, because the conditions include the light. Is it noon? Is it blue hour? Is it golden hour? All of these things are going to affect how you shoot. Now, I would think ideally if you're doing a portrait session, you might want to get there late afternoon and be there long enough to get golden hour and maybe blue hour, because that sort of natural light can be really attractive.
Absolutely. So there are a couple of things there. So you've got timing. So you want to know when the sun's going to go down, but also you want to know not just when the sun is going to set, but especially in this case, being in Seattle, the sun may be visible 45 minutes before it actually sets because of buildings or hills or whatever structure you're around it. So knowing where that is. One of the things that I use for that is, and there are a few different apps, but the one I've always used is called TPE, which is the photographer's Ephemeris. And it's a great app for letting you say, this is where I am or this is where I'm going to be. And it has lots of radiating lines that indicate when and where the sun is for sunrise and sunset and blue hour, like all those different permutations. But it also has this really cool AR view. So you can put your phone up. It's basically like in a camera mode, turn on AR mode. And as you scroll through the day's time, you can see like the sun is going to be right there at 4:35. Or it's going to be too high if I get here at 2 o'clock. And if I am here and it's like, well, right now the sun sets here like around 8:30. So if I'm here and it's like 7 o'clock, well, I've missed the light because it's going to be down past those buildings over there. And it is so incredibly helpful to figure out even a rough idea of when should I get there? How much time am I going to need to set up? All of those kind of things. So if you don't have something like the photographer's ephemeris, I highly recommend it. There are some other things.
Can I just ask you to explain what golden hour and blue hour are for any of our listeners who don't know these terms?
Yeah, basically it's the time before the sun actually sets. And when the sun is basically low in the sky, you're getting more golden light. It generally tends to be warmer light. You get longer shadows, but it's not as
It's not
harsh.
Yeah.
It's not harsh like it would be in the middle of the day. And so you basically have, because of the angle of the light, you're going to see better light on the side of a person rather than having shadows coming down below. And then blue hour is basically right after the sun has set, and you still have lots of radiant light in the sky. And sometimes, I mean, if I can give one landscape photography tip above all others, is when the sun sets, sometimes that is when your photo shoot really starts.
Yeah.
There have been so many times, maybe I've told this story. I was on a photo workshop and we were at a location and there were other photo tours going on. And the sun dropped behind the horizon and one of the guys leading another workshop was like, "All right, my gang, let's go." And they all left. And me and the people in my group, we're just looking around like, is he serious? Because we were there for another hour and a half and the sky was just colorful and the clouds were amazing. So just because the sun is down, don't think you are done. Like sometimes that can be the absolute best shots that you get.
Well, you can't really get a sunset until the sun goes below the horizon. I mean, you do get some colors before, but the sun is so bright that if you're shooting towards the sun, it blinds you. You want to get that bit just after the sun peaks down under the horizon is the ideal.
And, you know, depending on when you're shooting, if you're shooting out across water, you get the sun reflecting on the water and everything just gets like really burnt umber orange colored. It's fabulous. But if you don't know when that's going to be, then that's not going to help you, which leads me to my other thing that I use is all the time on my Apple Watch, I have a complication that is, and a complication being the little information on the watch face that shows me when sunset and sunrise is going to happen. So I can know, because I've never done this before, I'm taking photos and completely lose track of time and then realize, oh my God, I need to be over there because over there is where I wanted to set up for my actual sunset shot. So being able to check that right away is super helpful. There's also an app that you mentioned that I've had for a while called Lumi, Lumy, and that gives you lots more detail on when golden hour is going to start and end and all of that. So lots and lots of good information about that.
It sounds interesting. It sounds like it's a lot of work. And I think it highlights that photography is not just pointing the camera and pushing the button. Right.
Yeah.
We talk about composition. We talk about, understanding things like apertures and stuff. But there's a lot that goes beyond what you think about as part of the photographic process. Obviously, if you've ever done a studio shoot, you know how important lighting is. Right. But when you're outdoors, do you use the natural light? Do you bring your own? Do you use a flash on camera, or do you take a flash off camera with a cable that you can use as a fill? Do you use the flashlight on your iPhone to get rid of some of the shadows under someone's chin, for example, especially when it gets late? You have all these things that have to do with everything that's not taking the picture, everything that makes it possible to be in the right context for a picture.
Yeah. And actually, I want to go back to what you started with when you were talking about the magazine that would give out the locations. No, not the Boy Scouting. The photo magazine that would tell you locations. It's also super important as you are, preparing for a workshop or a trip, or even you're on vacation, that maybe you'll have an afternoon or, maybe a couple of days to just go shoot photos. It sounds silly, but using something like Flickr or 500px. I would say Instagram, but Instagram's so polluted with AI crap now, it's really not so good. But looking up locations and seeing what other people have shot is also really helpful, because you're right. This is a lot of work. You're doing a lot of research beforehand. And the idea is not just, okay, where can I get a good photo in this city or in this area that I'm at? It's also, where have other people had some success here? And so you can see that, like for example, in Seattle, there's a bridge that if you go to the bridge, there's actually like someone has cut a hole in a chain link fence that's been there forever. And if you know where that is, you get this nice framed image of the Seattle downtown skyline. And at sunset, the sun comes from the left and makes the buildings golden. It's a great shot. If you're just walking there, you may not see it. So doing some research, seeing what other people have done, and having a few different options, that's also key, because you're going to get there and maybe the conditions aren't great. Maybe some foliage has grown up in front of the spot that you were expecting. What's key is you're not casting about in a panic trying to figure out what to take a picture of as the sun goes down. You have some ideas. And then with that framework, then you can enjoy looking for angles and light and all of those things that make this photo your photo and not just every photo that everybody has taken in that spot.
I was just about to say that. You don't want to be copying what everyone else has done. You have to figure out the way to make it unique to your style. And like, you think I see these, every once in a while they show Mount Snowdonia in Wales where people climb up, and it's a several hours hike, but it's not very steep. And then you see the lines of 300 people waiting to get up to the top to take their photos. And it's like, fine, you've proven that you've gotten up to the top of the mountain. That's wonderful. And you've gotten the same photo as everyone. And you want to avoid that. You want to find, I would say avoid anything that people line up to take photos of.
Yeah.
I would avoid anything like that.
Yeah, I haven't gone to too many places that are to that extent, but there are definitely some places where I've seen this picture, I want to grab this picture, I am going to grab that picture, but then I know that I've got 4 or 5 other things that I want that's just off to the side or somewhere close by or whatever.
Okay. I think the slogan of this episode is "Be prepared."
Wow. Did you start with that in mind? Because
absolutely not. That just came up.
This is professional podcasting, ladies and gentlemen, right here.
All right, let's do snapshots. What have you got this week?
My snapshot, as you know, we have spoken at length about coffee and tea at one point, and I have finally bought myself a new coffee grinder. And you're like, okay,
here we go.
Big deal.
No,
here we go.
No, there's one of those things because you bought like a $600 espresso machine a year or two ago, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Well, I think it was like $450 or something like that. But here's the thing about coffee. You can have a mediocre espresso machine and a great grinder, and you'll get better results.
Of course.
Of course. So far, for literally 20 years, I've had a really good grinder that I think I did spend $500 or $600 on. And it's old. I've cleaned it. It still works really well. It's just not as consistent. So I decided that I wanted to find something else. And I actually had drinks with a guy named Mark Prince when I was in Victoria, BC. He runs a site called Coffee Geek. And it just so happened that when I went to see him at his house, he was working on a lineup of like the best grinders under $300 or something like that. And we'll put a link in the show notes. And so I got to ask him, like, all right, what would be a good grinder? And so he pointed me toward this. And this is what I bought is the Mi Coffee, MIICOFFEE, DF54 single dose coffee grinder. Now, the DF54 actually is sold by a number of different companies, so you might see it somewhere else. It's the DF54 that's important. And basically, it's a flat burr grinder that is actually quieter than my old one. It's more efficient than my old one. It is smaller than my old one. And so far, it's made really high precision espresso grounds, and I also grind for pour over. It was only about $260, so less than I spent on my last one. Therefore, in terms of grinders, absolutely affordable. Kirk, what do you have this week?
Well, my Snapshot is bread. And good coincidence, we've got food and drink. And I've been making bread for a long time. I particularly made a lot of bread during lockdown and put on a lot of weight, and then I stopped. And for about the last 6 months, I've been making bread again. And the reason I want to mention bread is it's the ideal thing for pixel peepers. It's like if you want to geek out on something, I mean, your coffee grinder and machine and bread is the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like you can get so obsessive. I don't make sourdough. I just make yeast bread. But with your sourdough starter, what's your proportions of flour to water? Do you use rye flour? Do you use all wheat? Do you put in some barley? Do you feed it with something else? What's the temperature? Do you buy a warmer for your sourdough starter, right? And then you get the whole analog versus digital thing. It's like you can get a stand mixer. I have a KitchenAid. It's like a standard, the stand mixer that our parents had, right? But you can get the luxurious Ankerstrom stand mixer, which is a totally different kind of mixer. Or Uni now makes a stand mixer, which is a planetary mixer, which means that the center part spins around while the bowl spins around. And these are all the kinds of things that people do. Or you can go the analog way and you can just knead by hand. I've been using the slap and fold technique recently. With a high hydration bread, you mix the dough, then you pick it up, slap it on the counter, fold it over and stretch it, and you turn it around. And my bread is really good, but I don't do sourdough. The slap and fold is interesting, but the KitchenAid's pretty good. I am tempted by that Ankerstrom though. It's like 700 pounds, which is pretty high. But if you're into like the process and everything that's around doing something, bread is, you've got everything from science and chemistry to the gadgets that you use to make it and all that. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you want to geek out, make bread. And then drink coffee.
Drink coffee with the bread.
Okay, that's enough for this week.
Well, now I'm hungry. Thank you.
See you next time, Jeff.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes.